June 29, 1987. A broadcast was being aired. Dear citizens of the Republic of Korea, in a dire time like this, when conflicts and disagreements have built over generations between the people. On his way home from school, Dojun pays close attention to this broadcast and thinks to himself, the current president announced that he will accept proposed changes to the constitution regarding the presidency. Note, this led to the establishment of a 5-year presidential term in South Korea. A gathering of civilians assembled on the sidewalk, their attention captured by the live broadcast emanating from an electronic store display window. Dojun speculated that an official government announcement aligning with the broadcast implied the imminent commencement of a new presidential race. Sipping on a refreshing beverage, he pondered the actions his grandfather might undertake in response to these developments. As the vehicle reached its destination, attention shifted to Dojun ascending the steps leading to his gate. His chauffeur patiently waited by the car, ensuring Dojun's safe entry into his residence before departing. Upon entering his home, an elderly man warmly welcomed Dojun, relaying the news of his grandfather's earlier arrival and expressing the older man's eagerness for Dojun's return. Dojun was taken aback by the untimely arrival of his grandfather. He had not anticipated such promptness. Suddenly, they were both startled by the old man's voice emanating from the interior of the dwelling, seeking clarification regarding the content of a prior conversation. Dojun was curious to know what the commotion was about, and we then see his beautiful mother explaining that she has never coveted any shares of Soonyang Corporation, and neither did Dojun's father. And it's going to stay that way. Her comments surprised Jin, who responded with a bewildered expression and a questioning, "What?" Hyeonwoo appeared to be deeply contemplative for a period of time before elucidating that she comprehended the old man's intention and advising them to provide Dojun with a comprehensive education to equip him for a career in business management. However, it should be noted that Dojun is merely 10 years old. With a stern expression, she expresses her desire to defer that decision to Dojun and wait until he is old enough to choose what he wants to do. In an attempt to clarify matters, Jin expressed uncertainty about Hyeonwoo fully understanding the profound significance of his gift of Soonyang shares. Once more, emphasizing his willingness to embrace her as part of his family, he questioned her final decision. Was she genuinely planning to let go of this opportunity? Hyeonwoo, resting her wrist on her legs and being determined, held onto her dress, offering her apologies. She stated their desire for Dojun to pursue his own aspirations in the future, and that's the extent of their wish. Her unwavering stance irked Jin, who now gritted his teeth and stared at her intently. A sudden young voice, filled with curiosity, interrupted the tense moment, saying, "Grandfather?" Startled by his unexpected entrance, Yang Cheol and Hyeonwoo both turned to face Dojun, who now stood at the room's entrance. Bounding towards Dojun with arms outstretched, the old man yelled, "Oh, my little sweet pea," making it clear that his love for him had not changed despite Dojun's significant growth since their first meeting. "How was school?" he asked as he hoisted Dojun into the air. Dojun, resembling an embarrassed big baby, thought to himself that the old man was quite strong for his age. This joyous scene illuminated his mother's face, bringing ease even after their earlier tense conversation. With love in his eyes, Dojun looked at his mother, whom he found incredible for having the guts to reject his grandfather's wishes in order to prioritize him. While playing dumb, Dojun abruptly asked his grandpa if he was angry, sending him into a tizzy. No. Why would I be angry?" he inquired nervously as he helped Dojun to his feet. He went on to explain, hesitantly, that it was simply that Grandpa's voice was particularly loud. His mother intervened to reassure Dojun that his grandfather was not angry, they were simply discussing something. Dojun then made a suspicious expression and wondered if she truly believed he would accept that explanation. After all, he had overheard everything. "You do not have to argue because of me," he explained in a cute, childish tone. Both his mother and grandpa looked away with a guilty expression while he continued to explain that he was going to do what he wanted to do when he grew up, just like his mother had mentioned. After hearing Dojun's explanation, they both looked at him in confusion, and then his grandpa turned away in dismay. Dojun, however, had a cunning smile on his face as he thought to himself, the infamous iron face, disappointed that his own grandson had rejected him. What a sight. He then also informed his grandfather that when he grows up, he wants to be the CEO of a large corporation, just like he was, sending a jolt of shock through his grandfather's mind. Yang Cheol's eyes widened in surprise at his little sweet pea's proclamation before settling into a proud laugh. Excellent response. After all, my blood runs thick in your veins. Sometimes great qualities skip a generation and show up later. Indeed, indeed, his grandfather exclaimed aloud. His mother stood there in bewilderment, her beautiful eyes wide open and her little cherry lips perched. With excitement, the old man turned to her and exclaimed, "So what do you say now? You can't object anymore, my girl." While she stood there, still astounded by her son's ambitions, the old man exclaimed, "Even Dojun says he wants to be an entrepreneur." Finally coming to terms with everything that has been said, Seo Hyeon struggles to hold back her tears and, in an attempt to do so, turns towards the kitchen, explaining that she will get the old man another cup of tea. Dojun and Yang Cheol both seem to notice her reaction, which makes them both feel uneasy as the old man accepts her offer and asks if she could bring the tea to Dojun's room. He quickly ignores her teary eyes and joyfully declares that he believes he will speak to his grandson privately for a moment, while Dojun wonders, what is up with his mother? Dojun noticed that she appeared to be crying and wondered if it was because he addressed her as my girl, as he does to all his other daughters-in-law, rather than by her name. They both stood afar for a brief moment, silently looking at Seo Hyeon with unease, before proceeding to Dojun's room. After they both settled into a seat, the old man asked Dojun whether he still remembered what he told this old man a few days ago, to which Dojun responded with an unsure no. His grandfather further expounds that he was referring to his statement about the three friends. "Oh, the three powerful friends?" With an unexpected tone, Dojun asked, and the old man confirmed with a yeah. "What you said about them?" Dojun thinks to himself, "Of course I do, after all, that's the real purpose behind your visit today. Isn't it?" In accordance with Dojun's suggestion, Yang Cheol then informed him that he had sent presents to all three of them in order to become friends with them. Acting naively, Dojun said, "Oh, I see," but he was really thinking, wow, he bribed all three of them already, having made decisions that fast? It appears that someone is impatient. His grandpa continued, expressing disappointment that things were not unfolding as anticipated, with the second-place and third-place candidates teaming up against the first-place candidate. Interjecting with an eager smile, Dojun sought validation from his grandfather. He inquired whether the conversation pertained to the three presidential candidates, subtly asserting a desire not to be treated like a child. His grandfather, satisfied with Dojun's astuteness, affirmed and suggested framing it as three candidates for his class president. Dojun, showing great enthusiasm, asked whether the second-place candidate would become president and the third-place candidate vice president if they won. Yang Cheol-jin clarified that in this country, one cannot hold the office of vice president, only the presidency is available. Dojun, seizing on this information, pompously inquired why the second and third-place candidates would team up when only one could become president, leaving the other with nothing. A look of startled realization crossed the old man's face as he quickly inquired, "So, you think they will not team up?" In response, Dojun expressed his opinion that the third-place finisher would not genuinely assist the second-place finisher when doing so would yield no benefits for either of them. He elaborated, suggesting that while a candidate in 10th or 20th place might be willing to assist a winner, the one in third place would refrain from doing so, considering they have an equal chance of securing victory themselves. The old man responded with a contemplative "I see," his eyes widening in realization of the truth Dojun had just elucidated. They'll never work together. It is clear now. Dojun, with a cunning expression, reflected on his knowledge from his previous life. He pondered the misconception held by most people that the two candidates joined forces, emphasizing that, contrary to popular belief, they never collaborated. He understood that there was no need for him to delve into a detailed explanation of future events, introducing a new, rational viewpoint and casting doubt sufficed. The subtle clues provided by Dojun were sufficient for his grandfather to discern the unfolding situation. With a determined expression, the elder believed that neither Soonyang's upper management nor influential political figures questioned the alliance between the two. Among them, Dojun was the sole voice assertively stating that the collaboration between the second and third place contenders was improbable. While one might attribute this to Dojun's youth and limited knowledge of politics and current events, it could also be viewed as his unique way of expressing insights. Despite lacking comprehensive understanding, he displayed an acute awareness of human nature's inherent selfishness and ambition. As the old man extended his hand to pat Dojun on the head, his final reflection acknowledged that Dojun's statement held a measure of validity. The pat on the head was accompanied by the words, "You are such a smart boy, my sweet pea," eliciting joy and pride from Dojun, a subtle triumph in the ongoing chess game of perspectives. The weather is delightful today, with the sun casting warm rays through the leaves, creating a dappled effect on the road as a vehicle passes by. While gazing out of the car window, Dojun is captivated by the beautiful scenery unfolding before him. A lingering question from a prior conversation resurfaces in his mind: "Do you want to go to Dangjin?" In response to his mom's worried inquiry about why he would want to go there, Dojun passionately explains his interest in seeing Dangjin for himself. He mentions that, according to the textbook, it is the only location in South Korea that faces the sea to the north. Despite the seemingly odd request, his parents exchanged puzzled glances. However, the true motive behind Dojun's desire to visit Dangjin is not related to what he stated. There is a specific matter he needs to verify regarding his true identity, particularly confirming the authenticity of Hyeonwoo. The billboard reading Yoon's Dry Cleaning welcomes him as he arrives at the dry cleaner. As he gazes at the store, the realization hits him: this is it, the store run by my previous parents. A sense of awe crosses his face. Hyeonwoo is visibly anxious, pondering, what do I say to them when I see them? What if I mistakenly address them as father or mother? As he glances up at the storefront, a wave of emotion overtakes him. The words mother and father escape his lips, expressing his immediate connection to them. Wiping away tears of joy, he is overwhelmed with happiness to see that his biological parents are alive and well. Suddenly, a door creaks open, and his mother approaches him, asking, "Hi, kid. Are you all right?" His expression shifts from startled to bewildered to that of a lost puppy steer as he grapples with how to respond to this unexpected encounter. Standing before him is his previous mother, genuinely concerned about his well-being. How should he navigate this emotional moment? Out of nowhere, his biological father joined them, tapping his hand and asking if anything was wrong. His previous mother responded, "Oh, there is a kid crying in front of the store." With a warm smile, his previous father inquired, "Really? Are you lost by any chance?" Dojun responded negatively, clarifying that he arrived at this location under the assumption that it was his friend's residence. His previous father exclaimed, "Your friend," displaying a visage of astonishment. Dojun subsequently affirmed with a nod and proceeded to inquire if Hyeonwoo resided in that location. They both gazed at Dojun with a questioning expression before shifting their attention towards each other. "Hyeonwoo? I am not familiar with any child bearing that particular name. What about asking Hyeonji if any of her friends are named Hyeonwoo?" Dojun had a sudden realization and pondered to himself, "Hyeonji, wait. No way. Who's Hyeonji?" He inquired eagerly, and his previous mother's reaction was rather suspicious until she clarified that Hyeonji was actually their daughter. Dojun contemplates that he did not have a sibling named Hyeonji in his previous existence, and these two individuals are unaware of the identity of Hyeonwoo. This implies that an individual by the name of Hyeonwoo is completely non-existent. The scene shifts to Yang Cheol-jin tossing the daily newspaper onto his desk, which contains the main story about the newly elected president. Seated at his desk, with his arms crossed and his gaze fixed on the daily newspaper, he contemplates whether Dojun's observation was accurate. Following the recent abdication of the previous administration, major corporations publicly expressed their endorsement for the two candidates from the same political party. Their rationale was rooted in the expectation that these candidates would collaborate and collectively determine which one of them would be nominated for the presidency. However, I thought what Dojun said made sense and gave the opposition party the biggest gift and gave the two from the other party just enough for an allowance. Finally, Yang Cheol grinned contentedly and thought about how Dojun's opinion had been so beneficial to the company. The sun is shining, the sky is a shade of dazzling blue, and a refreshing wind whispers through the trees as it encircles a picture-perfect home. At home, Dojun follows in his grandfather's footsteps by sitting with his arms folded and staring intently at the daily newspaper, which bears the headline "New President-elect" on its cover. This is just like what he remembered from his past life, he tells himself. On the other hand, he must not be complacent because his previous parents had a daughter, not Hyeonwoo, but a daughter he had no knowledge of. This implies that his knowledge and the details he records may not be entirely accurate regarding future events. Reflecting on his grandpa's joyful attitude towards him, he cannot help but wonder if the old man's newfound compassion for him and his family heralds a turning point in the future he envisions. A change in the future may mean that the best weapon in my arsenal could become worthless. I need to have proper means to overtake Soonyang Corporation by the time I turn 20 because my grandfather is set to lie ill on his bed and wait for his death in 10 years. I must acquire as many shares under mine or my father's name as possible to compete with my uncle Dojun Jin in the race to the throne. Most importantly, I must prevent a tragic car accident that occurred and killed Dojun Jin in my previous life before his 20th birthday. None of my immediate family members, including me and my parents, were alive when I lived as Hyeonwoo and cleaned up the mess the Jins left behind. They were killed in a tragically large car accident. During my time as Hyeonwoo, I completely disregarded the family, as they were entirely ostracized from the rest of the relatives. Because of that, I don't remember any details about this specific car accident. As Dojun prepares to leave, he firmly reminds himself that he must avoid his predestined demise and find a way to miraculously extend his grandfather's lifespan. Perhaps that will alter the course of events to come. Overwhelmed with the thoughts of all he needs to accomplish, he exclaimed, "Damn." Suddenly, Dojun's room door opens, and his mother calls him to tell him he needs to get going. The awe-inspiring nature of her beauty is perpetual. With a nonchalant response of "okay," Dojun then proceeds to leave, convinced that he will not be able to find a solution to this perplexing question no matter how much he contemplates it. All I can do at this point is check on my actions and possible results each day and advance step by step. The Grand Soonyang Hotel stands prominently against the serene night sky. Within its walls, Yang Cheol Jin expresses his delight, saying, "It is wonderful to see you, my sweet pea," as Dojun joyfully rushes towards his grandfather, embracing him with open arms and exclaiming, "Grandpa." He immediately laments, "Damn it, I can never get used to acting like an innocent child. But it's not like I can refuse to." After a joyful greeting and an embrace, his grandpa told him to take a seat. Dojun sat down joyfully, acting out the part of a carefree youngster, as he gazed up at his grandfather's commanding figure. Suddenly, the realization dawns upon Dojun that it's just the two of them and no one else. He looks around the room, puzzled, and thinks to himself, "I guess he wants to spend time with me alone, away from everyone else." Dojun and his grandfather are seated at a table set for four. The room is momentarily quiet as Dojun observes his grandfather, who appears to be in a state of great happiness. Dojun reflects on the fact that his grandfather was likely even more ecstatic earlier in the day, when the election results were officially confirmed and made public. Suddenly, Dojun breaks the silence and exclaims, "Grandpa, you look really happy today." This statement came as a surprise to his grandfather, leading him to question Dojun's statement. This evoked a recollection of the instances when he conversed with the current elected president, articulating his appreciation. "I'll never forget the support you showed me, Mr. Jin. Thank you." Those words elicited a gratifying smile on his face in the past, akin to the smile he currently exhibits as he returns to the present moment. With a contented expression, he affirms to Dojun that his happiness stems from the quality time he is spending with his grandson. "Ask Granddaddy for anything, and I'll buy it for you. Do you want delicious food or the nicest toy?" Oh, do you already know about my report card? Dojun exclaimed with an eager expression. His grandfather, puzzled, inquired, report card? Dojun speculated internally, I'm sure he forgot about that promise already, but he'll do me any favor because he gambled based on my advice and won. Soonyang will be in a strong position for the next 5 years. Dojun then informed his grandpa that he had acquired straight A's on his report card, just as his grandpa had requested. As a matter of fact, he got all hundreds on his exams. This left his grandfather dumbfounded as he inquired in a shocked tone, "You got all hundreds?" "Yeah, I was the only one who didn't answer a single question wrong in my class," Dojun casually replied. As you might imagine, this was like honey being poured on his pancakes. The old man roared with excitement. "That's amazing. But I'm sorry, we can't go shopping for a horse because it's too late today." Dojun cast a sly gaze at his grandpa and contemplated, "I have no interest in acquiring a lowly horse. Instead, I intend to employ it as a diversion to obtain something of considerably greater worth." Suddenly, Dojun replies, "It's okay. It's not like I know how to ride a horse anyway. You can buy me one after I learn how to ride it over the winter vacation." Grandfather? If you didn't call me from my report card, then why?" Dojun inquired, to which the old man informed him that, thanks to his help, grandfather's company is going to grow even bigger. Meaning he will make a lot more money than before. Dojun then exclaimed with excitement, "Wow!" Then he inquired if this meant he could buy him something even better than the horse. His grandfather scratched his chin and stated that, of course, it's only fair to reward him properly. "Let's see. I promised to buy you a horse, but now I need to get you something better. What should it be?" Dojun then urged his grandpa to wait and inquired, "If you buy me a horse, it has to live on your ranch located on Jeju Island, right?" "But I can't go to Jeju to ride my horse every day because it's too far from here." His grandfather agreed that's true and further exclaimed, "What should I do then?" Suddenly, the door knocks, and 2 security guards enter alongside 3 waiters with platters of food. So his grandfather suggested, why don't they think about it while they have something to eat? On the table before them now lies an array of exquisite dishes and delicious desserts. Dojun then urged his grandfather to eat first. Note, it's common courtesy in South Korea to have your elders take the first bite of the meal. "I will," his grandfather chuckled while he set the chopsticks in hand. He further stated, "Maybe I need to get a new ranch for you somewhere closer, so you could ride your horse every day." "Really?" Dojun inquired while secretly thinking, this is it. This is what he wanted to hear from the old man. The old man unsuspectingly agreed without hesitation, stating that, as a present, he will give Dojun a ranch he can go to any time he wants. How does that sound? Dojun displayed his best look of excitement, his eyes wide open, his hands clasped together. "Now cuter than Cupid," he exclaimed, "Whoa!" He rushes over to his grandpa, giving him a big, warm hug and telling him, "Thank you so much, Grandpa." "Are you that excited?" the old man inquired while patting his grandson on the head. Dojun's cunning inner thoughts almost seemed palpable, as he thinks, this is only the beginning. When asked about the location of the ranch, the old man suggested a place called Wondang, situated north of Seoul. He believed it had a large ranch suitable for keeping the horse, and he intended to buy that place for Dojun. However, Dojun's reaction wasn't entirely positive. Internally, he objected, "No. That's not the place I want." He fell silent with a sullen demeanor, prompting his grandfather to inquire about his feelings. Dojun acknowledged that he liked the proposed location, but he pointed out that he lives in Gangnam, and Wondang is a bit far away. His grandfather, in response, teased him for being picky, stating that unfortunately, there's no ranch closer to Gangnam. Seizing the opportunity to steer the conversation, Dojun excitedly suggested, "You can make one. You're good at making things happen quickly, Grandpa." The old man, taken aback, inquired about making one, and Dojun found the sudden burst of laughter amusing and puzzling at the same time. "Dojun, out of the 48 affiliates of Soonyang Corporation, I personally established 19 of them. The remaining entities were acquired through mergers or other strategic means. A significant portion of the companies I founded were established at the outset of my entrepreneurial journey. I hold a firm belief that an entrepreneur should initiate and build their own company from the ground up, fostering a deeper connection, a sense of ownership, and the ability to make decisions in the best interest of the company. Dojun stared at the old man in anticipation, wondering where he was heading with this. After all, he had simply asked for a new ranch. His grandfather then declared, "I am absolutely satisfied with your idea of creating a brand new ranch from scratch." He playfully tapped a bewildered Dojun on the shoulder, stating that this is what he would do. "I will help you take the first step as a real owner of something." The sudden and unexpected development left Dojun in awe, wondering if this was a part of entrepreneurship training. The old man gave an assertive shout towards the doors, inquiring if anyone was there. Subsequently, a man dressed in professional attire opened the door and acknowledged the old man's call. He instructed the young man to bring him a map of Seoul and Gyeonggi province, the latter being a province that neighbors Seoul. The young man acknowledged the order with a respectful, "Okay, sir." Dojun, with excitement in his eyes, thought to himself, "Map of Seoul and Gyeonggi province." A short while later, the young man returned with the requested items and handed them to the old man. Yang Cheol-jin spread the map across the table and, with a slight smirk, exclaimed, "Let's see how good of an eye you have, Dojun." His grandpa reached out to him with a pen, leaving Dojun staring with a puzzled expression before the old man stated, "Why don't you mark where you want to build your ranch on the map?" Dojun's little heart started to race as he looked at the pen, thinking to himself, "Finally. I actually wish to create many ranches throughout the country. If I could acquire land whose value will skyrocket in 10 to 20 years from today, that will serve as a solid foundation during the battle for Soonyang's shares in the future." His grandfather then informed him that he should be careful not to choose the central parts of Seoul or well-developed areas of Gyeonggi province because they can't build a ranch in those locations. Dojun scribbled on the map with a casual demeanor, then exclaimed, "Here." The old man took the map to analyze his selection and stated, "Isn't this a bit far away from your home?" To which Dojun feigned ignorance and replied, "Is it?" The old man then called to the young man at the door and ordered him to check the status of the lands available in the marked area while stressing the point that he requires accurate details. The young man took the documents, confirmed with a respectful "Yes, sir," bowed his head, and left immediately to complete the given task. Dojun looked on with eager anticipation and disbelief. His life's mission was now proceeding smoothly. His grandfather then invited him to continue eating, and he agreed with a pleasant okay. Sometime later, they were both enjoying the food, tea, and the tranquil night. The old man then inquired about his school life and whether or not he had made lots of friends. Dojun confirmed in a nervous tone that he had indeed been making lots of friends, but this was a lie as he thought to himself that he actually has no friends. How could he become friends with children when he is around 40 years old mentally? Suddenly, there was another knock at the door, to which his grandfather instructed the visitor to come in. The young man had returned. He bowed politely before proceeding to hand over the requested documents. The young man elaborated that the area primarily comprised undeveloped green spaces and fell within a limited development zone. It was characterized by typical rural landscapes, predominantly featuring cucumber and melon farms. Due to poor transportation infrastructure, accessing the area posed a challenge. Moreover, the more densely populated regions nearby were largely inhabited by low-income residents, making large-scale development unlikely in the foreseeable future. Examining the map thoughtfully, the old man nodded in understanding. "I see. In that case, establishing a ranch in this area shouldn't encounter any significant obstacles." As the old man withdrew the map and adopted a contemplative stance, he intermittently tapped the table with a finger, suggesting deep thought. Meanwhile, Dojun observed with growing apprehension, perspiration forming on his brow. Abruptly, the tapping ceased, and the old man issued a directive. "Conduct a comprehensive search for land parcels available for acquisition in this vicinity," he instructed, indicating the designated area on the map. "Ensure that the selected parcels have a minimum lot size of 40 acres. As the young man acknowledged the task and left to carry out the assignment, Dojun inwardly celebrated, recognizing that things were progressing according to his plan. The old man then directed his attention to Dojun and made a critical observation about the chosen piece of land, dismissing it as merely a vast expanse of soil, an acquisition not fitting for someone of his grandfather's stature. Puzzled, Dojun sought an explanation, prompting the old man to elaborate on the extended period it would likely take for the land's value to appreciate significantly. Acknowledging his advanced age, the old man dismissed any personal interest in such a long-term investment. However, with a glimmer of wisdom, the old man made a crucial distinction, emphasizing that Dojun, being young, possessed the advantage of witnessing substantial changes in the land's value over the next 2 or 3 decades. In response, Dojun, feigning innocence, queried the reason behind this assessment. The old man proceeded to highlight the untapped potential within the land, hinting at the prospect of a considerable increase in its value over the next 20 or 30 years, an investment horizon that aligned more favorably with Dojun's youthful perspective. With an outward display of agreement, Dojun assured his grandfather that he would heed his advice regarding the long-term investment in the land. However, beneath the surface, a sly and somewhat sinister expression crept onto Dojun's face as he dismissed the notion of waiting 2 or 3 decades. In his mind, he was already strategizing for a much shorter timeline, confident that the land would transform into the planned community of Bundang within just 2 years. As he savored a shrimp sushi from the plate, Dojun reveled in the notion that he now possessed 40 acres of prime land in Bundang. His mind was already racing with the possibilities and benefits this acquisition could yield. Note, Bundang was developed to encourage affordable housing and urban decentralization and is now one of the more densely populated cities in South Korea. The subsequent day, within the premises of the old man's office, he raised an inquiry as to whether this individual sought his aid in pursuing the representative position of Jangmyo, a district located in Seoul, South Korea. The young man sheepishly acknowledged Yang Cheol-jin's inquiry with a respectful "Yes, sir." The red-headed woman interjected, noting that it was merely his first attempt, but she believed having a family member represent a significant district could yield political advantages for the company. Yang Cheol-jin, with a stern countenance, dismissed the idea, stating that the current Jangmyo representative was already loyal to him. He suggested that the young man should aim for the representative position in Suwon instead, emphasizing that it could be easily won without spending any funds, given Soonyang's substantial presence in the area. The red-headed woman, visibly agitated, questioned her father's reluctance to invest in the endeavor. Yang Cheol-jin responded with a stern gaze and a more severe tone, reminding her that Mr. Choi had declined the opportunity to become the prosecutor general, a path that Yang Cheol-jin had paved for him, just to pursue a congressional run. Mr. Choi, the young man, nervously extended his apologies, avoiding direct eye contact. Unfazed, the red-headed woman passionately argued that her father should recognize Mr. Choi's credentials, hailing from a family renowned for producing successful lawyers and judges. He will win easily anywhere else, even without their help, and both parties are desperate to recruit him. Yang Cheol-jin then inquired with a condescending smirk, "The family of lawyers and judges?" His smirk turned to a cold expression as he continued. "I was the one who made Mr. Choi's father the chief prosecutor with my power and my money, and not only that, I also helped Mr. Choi become senior prosecutor. Do you want to know why?" With a menacing aura almost palpable, the old man provided the answer. "So he could be a loyal dog of Soonyang Corporation and serve us faithfully." This realization sent shivers down Mr. Choi's weak spine as he looked on in horror, his fist clenched and shaking with rage. Yang Cheol-jin suddenly called to him, and he quickly, but nervously, acknowledged before the old man advised him not to be greedy. He should discard his needless ambitions, happily continue receiving whatever aid is offered, and relay this message to his family members as well. If you keep coveting more than you can swallow, your entire family will be in ruin. As these words resonate throughout the otherwise quiet room, Mr. Choi is left dumbfounded with the horrifying realization that he is a mere minion and respectfully confirms to the old man that he understood. Mr. Choi disarms his clenched fist and thinks to himself that it takes just a single call from his father-in-law for all his relatives in prosecution and justice to be sent away to a rural district in a form of exile. The old man then calls to Seo-yoon, startling her. She nervously looks towards her father, hands folded together as though she were ready to beg for his forgiveness. He then proceeds to scold her. "How dare you go against my advice to be content with your department stores?" She displays a traumatized expression and ponders to herself, did he see through my little scheme to gain political foothold by making my husband a congressman and using his influence to take the upper hand in the race to the ownership of Soonyang Corporation? She then bowed her head in defeat, conveyed her deepest apologies, and begged the old man for his forgiveness. Yang Cheol-jin once again ordered her to be satisfied with what she has now and to do her best with it because he will be left with no other choice but to replace her if the department store revenue drops the tiniest bit. Dojun seems to love this little juice box. Once again, he is slurping juice through a straw when suddenly his attention is piqued. He sees his miserable aunt and her pissed-off husband taking their leave and thinks to himself, it looks like she was admonished for being greedy again. Dojun displays a sated smile while thinking, to be fair, she must be frustrated that her brothers are clearly in far more advantageous positions to succeed the company. I understand her sentiments. I guess I won't have to worry about them too much. Suddenly his grandfather approaches with a rather inviting presence, exclaiming, "My sweet little pea. Sorry to keep you waiting." Dojun sheepishly replied that it was okay because he was reading a book anyway. "Oh, really?" the old man inquired, then praised Dojun, stating, "That is a good habit, and you should always keep a book by your side." Dojun agrees, and the old man then hands him a file of some sort. He inquires as to what it is, and the old man informs him that it is the title to the land he wanted, which is 65 acres in total. Dojun's eyes sparkle as he looks intently at the files in his hand and thinks to himself, "Whoa! It went up by 25 acres from the initial 40 the old man had mentioned." He then asks if the old man did not mention he was going to buy 40 acres the last time they spoke, to which his grandfather replies enthusiastically, "Do you remember the exact numbers? I am impressed." With a cunning expression, Dojun smiles and thinks to himself, "Of course you are. After all, remembering numbers accurately is the most fundamental quality required in business management." His grandfather then explained that the land was owned by several people, and it was difficult to get a nice chunk at around 40 acres, so it went up to 65 in total. Dojun, beaming with excitement, thinks to himself, "I see. That's why it increased by 25 to 40 acres. In 2-3 years, that will sell for, let's see, around 16 billion won. Note, approximately 11.8 million US. His grandpa noticed his beaming expression and inquired if he was really that happy, to which Dojun excitedly replied, "I am." He then thinks to himself, "Why wouldn't I be?" A 1,100 square foot unit at a luxury apartment complex sells for just 75 million won currently. Note, approximately 55,161 US, respectively. I now have enough money to buy more than 200 of these units. In a scene full of love, Dojun happily hugs his grandfather and exclaims, "Thank you, Grandpa." "You're welcome," the old man happily replied, while Dojun displays a villainous expression and thinks to himself, "Displaying this much affection is nothing compared to the 16 billion won gift you just gave me." 1988 was a wild year. The Ninth Amendment went into effect, and the president elected through a direct election system took office. The new president made the 7.7 declarations, emphasizing potential reconciliation between both North and South Korea and the improvement of diplomacy with the U.S. Note, the 7.7 declaration is a declaration made on July 7, 1988, by the President of South Korea. Furthermore, the first inspection since 1972 of the administration by the National Assembly, which had more representatives from the opposition party for the first time in 38 years, took place. Although the Korean economy continued to thrive as the currency exchange rate fell to 601 per USD, housing costs in Seoul drastically rose due to the overpopulation of the city. The government, having realized they couldn't stop real estate prices from increasing, announced a plan to construct 2 million additional housing units in districts such as Sanbon Yeongdong and Pyeongchon. However, housing costs continued to skyrocket until 1989. The government finally decided on the locations for the newly planned communities. Bundang and Ilsan of Gyeonggi Province were selected. Note, Gyeonggi Province is a province neighboring Seoul. The scene takes us into Yang Cheol-jin's office, where he sits at his desk with a shocked expression, staring at a piece of documentation, and exclaims, "Unbelievable." We are introduced to the Chief of Executive Protection, Hak Ji-lee, who curiously inquired as to what was so unbelievable. The old man then laughed, ha ha ha, and inquired if the chief remembered the old man had built a ranch for his grandson Dojun some time ago, to which the chief confirms he indeed remembered. The old man then tapped his finger on a map and informed the chief that this was where the ranch is located. The chief was extremely surprised upon seeing the location and exclaimed, "Isn't that where they're going to build the planned community?" With a look of satisfying victory, the old man smirked and confirmed that it was indeed true. Dojun's investment yielded 100 times as much profit in 1 year. Just 1 year. Taken aback and somewhat frightened by the old man's expression, but even more so by his explanation, the chief looked on awestruck. The old man continued, "Want to know something more incredible? I actually opposed the idea of buying land here. But he adamantly chose this piece of land against my advice, and look what happened." The old man laughed loudly while the chairman stood aside silently in a daze. The old man's laugh abruptly stopped before taking an expressionless glance at the chairman and issued a command, "If Dojun turns out to be a decent businessman, look out for him, okay?" The old man's now piercing gaze of authority and resolve locked onto the chairman before he continued, stating, "If I split off a few companies and give them to him as inheritance, my children will do everything to take them away from him. Make sure that never happens." Chairman Hak Ji-lee bowed gracefully and, with a firm resolve, reassured the old man that he would honor his command. The old man once again fixed his gaze on the maps, beaming with delight, proud, and satisfied about his grandson's decision. Night falls, and we return to Dojun's tranquil home. Staring at his bank account information, Dojun displayed a cunning grin while he tried to cover his mouth to withhold his emotions. He thinks to himself excitedly that now he has 14 billion won in his account since he only sold 49 acres and decided to hold on to the rest until the price goes up a bit more. He has well over 20 billion won in cash and assets combined. Note, approximately $10.3 million and approximately $14.7 million. He has a flashback to the moment his grandfather presented him with the money and informed him that this is the money he made, so he should do whatever he wants to do with it. Sitting all alone and looking at his bank details, Dojun tries to muzzle his villainous laugh of achievement, creating a somewhat sociopathic scene. His facial expression also adds validity to this description, as he thinks to himself that this is equivalent to 100 billion won when he died in his previous life. Note, approximately $73.7 million. Suddenly, someone knocks at his door, ruining his moment of self-glorification. His parents open his room door, and his mother immediately inquired if he had a moment. He confirmed he was not preoccupied, and his mother and father sat on his bed while Dojun sat in a chair with an attentive posture. His mother then inquired as to what he planned to do with all that money. He promptly and gleefully informed them that he told his grandfather that he was going to keep it in the bank. Both of his parents seem to be happy with this response, as they both look at each other with a happy, slight tinge of relief. Dojun looks at them both while thinking, "I'm only saying this because they must be worried that I have so much money at such a young age. Honestly, though, I'm not keeping it there." His father seems to be a man of very few words, as his mother once again inquires if there is anything he wants to buy. Dojun replied, "Not really," and stated that they bought him pretty much everything he needs anyway. "What about you?" Dojun inquired, leaving a surprised questioning expression on his beautiful mother's face. He further inquired as to what they wished to do with this money. Leaving both parents dumbfounded because they had not given this scenario any previous thought. Seeing their surprised expression, Dojun pondered, Why do they seem so surprised? His father then stands up with a gloomy, disappointed look, leaving both Dojun and his mother puzzled. His father then silently left the room. Dojun was left dumbfounded, wondering what just happened, and his mother sighed heavily with a pitiful expression. She reached out and placed her hands on top of Dojun's little hands and, with a bright smile, told him that she thinks his dad was a little surprised by his answer and that they would talk about it again at a later date. She proceeded to the exit, and Dojun nervously pondered whether or not he had misspoken. We now see that his father went outside for a breath of fresh air, and Seo Hyun then calmly approached him and reassured him that Dojun had spoken with genuinely good intention, so he should not pay too much attention to it. Fixing his glasses to his face, he reassures her that he is not upset or anything like that, rather, he is actually embarrassed. Seo Hyun was taken aback by her husband's reason for walking away, and he further exclaimed that he would be honest. When Dojun asked him that, he was really excited for a moment. He thought this may be the opportunity of a lifetime. With his fist clenched, he continued, a father coveting the money his own son made with wise investment. I'm so disgusted with myself right now. His beautiful Seo Hyun displayed a cute smile, and to comfort him, she explained that, to be fair, it is really a large amount of money, and she is not any different from him in that aspect. With that much money, you, me, Sang-jun, and Dojun could all immigrate to a foreign country and live happily together. That was the first thought I had in mind. He smiled at her comforting words, and they both stood together, stargazing in silence for a while. Unbeknownst to them, Dojun was standing with his arms folded at the door, listening to their conversation. He smiled and thought to himself, they are such loving parents, unlike the rest of the family. Later that night, Dojun went to his father, who sat on the couch reading a newspaper. He stood before him and politely said, I'm sorry, father. His father was taken aback by his son's sudden visit and apology. With a kind smile, he inquired as to why Dojun was sorry because he was not upset or anything. He was just a little surprised, and that's all. Anyhow, what do you wish to do with it? His father asked. Dojun excitedly explained, there's something I've been wanting to become. With a shocked expression, his father stated, something you want to become? What is it? Dojun then explained that he wanted to become the president of a company bigger than his grandfather's. Taken aback by this explanation, his father's eyes opened wide in surprise before he lightly chuckled and gradually transitioned into laughter. Dojun thinks to himself, well, I understand why father's laughing so hard like that. After all, Soonyang Corporation is the largest conglomerate in South Korea. To hear a preposterous dream to be the owner of a bigger company than that from his own son, I guess it's only natural. His father, having calmed down, commented that Dojun had a really big dream, prompting Dojun to explain that this was the reason why he needed his father's help. Activating his nerd prowess by shifting his glasses, his father spoke. My help? I don't think there's anything I could help you with, unfortunately. I am not interested in business management at all, nor do I have the capabilities. I did study business management in the UK, but I spent far more time on movies and cinematography while I was there. Surprisingly, after his explanation, Dojun had a nonchalant tone and a blank expression. That's good enough. Dojun further expounded on his reply, you said you studied business management in the UK, you must at least have colleagues that you studied with. Left dumbfounded by his son's reasoning, they both looked at each other in silence for a while before the scene shifts to the Soonyang building standing tall amidst the backdrop of a peach-colored sky. You're telling me that kid now has 14 billion won in his bank account plus more than 10 billion won in real estate? Dojun's uncle and vice chairman of Soonyang Corporation, Dojun Jin, was screaming at the top of his lungs, infuriated by the news of Dojun's newly acquired wealth. The young man reaffirmed it with a yes, sir. Yanggi was exuding a wrath that was almost palpable. Cold sweat trickled down his cheeks as he sat in a stupor, trying to comprehend his current predicament. His son, Yangjin, suddenly chimed in. Whoa, I'm so jealous of Dojun. Further infuriating his father, he was not familiar with the phrase quit while you're ahead, and so he further expounded that Dojun could collect 1 billion won per month in bank interest alone. That's enough money to buy 20 luxury apartment units in Gangnam every month. His father once again cried out, "Are you out of your mind?" His fury sent shivers down Yeonjun's spine, who could only stare at his father in fearful shock, not daring to say another word. His father further stated, "Your grandfather would never give a single penny to someone for free. Giving a little kid a ranch for his horses is one thing. But buying everything under the kid's name and giving him all of the profit from its sale is an entirely different issue." Finally grasping the realization of what all this implies, Yeonjun froze in horror as his father further explained, "Did your grandfather ever give you a single square foot of land or even money? That's how much your grandfather thinks you're worth to him. Think about it. And here you are, sitting like a bum and envying the kid for how much money he will collect in bank interest. You moron." Seemingly relieved to get all this off his chest, Yeongi relaxes back into his chair and sighs heavily. With a menacing look, he then thinks to himself that it would be best if he kept an eye out for Yoonji-ai's family from now on. Back at Dojun's house, his father introduces a well-groomed, handsome young man as his friend, who he had studied alongside while he was in the UK. Dojun looks at the young man with awe and curiosity as to who his father's friend could be before he says hello. The energetic young man introduced himself with a vibrant demeanor. "Hey buddy. I'm Hyeonwoo, your dad's friend," he exclaimed. Dojun, taken aback, couldn't help but ponder. Hyeonwoo? Isn't he the president of the Korean branch of Power Shares, a colossal asset management firm that will be handling approximately 800 trillion won annually, 30 years later? Hyeonwoo, maintaining a professional yet amicable demeanor, then requested a private conversation with Yoon-ji-ai's son. As Dojun reflected, he realized he had been unaware of his father's association with Hyeon. Before Dojun's father left the room, he left a directive for Dojun to engage Hyeon in conversation and absorb his wisdom. Dojun timidly agreed. Hyeon placed his bag on the ground, took a seat on the bed, and cast a peculiar glance at Dojun before initiating a conversation. "So, I heard you want to become an entrepreneur," he remarked. Dojun didn't hesitate to confirm his aspirations with a resolute "I do." Hyeon, intrigued, probed further. "Like your grandfather?" he questioned. Dojun shook his head, explaining that he aimed to surpass his grandfather's legacy. With a hint of amusement, Hyeon pressed on, asking if Dojun intended to build a company even larger than the largest corporation in South Korea. "That's quite an ambition," he remarked. Dojun, in an attempt to correct Hyeon's statement, said it was more like a dream of his. Hyeon, still underestimating Dojun, stated that Dojun maybe got his ambitiousness from his grandfather and his big dreams from his father. Dojun then inquired if Hyeon was the owner of a big company as well, to which he replied, "You could say that. But my line of work is a little different from that of your grandfather. Making wealthy people even wealthier is what I do." Dojun then stated that Hyeon must meet a lot of rich people. Hyeon confirms his statement, saying, "Most definitely," and Dojun excitedly asks if this means Hyeon could also help him make even more money. Shocked at Dojun's query, Hyeon exclaimed, "What?" before breaking into laughter. After calming down, he then informed Dojun that he came here because his father asked him to speak with Dojun and answer his questions. And furthermore, Dojun can't be his client. Dojun inquired why he couldn't be considered a client. Hyeon replied that all his clients were extremely wealthy. Confused, Dojun asked if his father hadn't mentioned it. This left Hyeon equally puzzled. Dojun elaborated, revealing that he had 14 billion won in his bank account, with the potential for an additional 10 billion or more after selling the remainder of his land. He then casually asked if that would meet Hyeon's criteria for taking him on as a client. Hyeon was frozen in shock, struggling to process this unexpected revelation. Dojun's cunning grin surfaces as he ponders to himself, "There were a fair number of underage millionaires by the time I perished in my previous existence, thanks to inherited shares, but not nearly as many at this juncture. Moreover, the funds I possess presently are akin to at least 100 billion won, 30 years hence." The notion of a 12-year-old holding such wealth must be rather surreal, to say the least. Translated to approximately 73.8 million US dollars. Time seems to stretch as silence envelopes the room, with only the faint ticking of the clock echoing the weight of this moment, what choices will be made and how they might shape their future relationship and potentially the destiny of Korea itself. 14 billion? Sehyon queried, his expression a mix of astonishment and disbelief. Dojun nods affirmatively and adds that he'll have an additional 10 million by year-end. Sehyon, perpetually astonished, can only stare at the child, rendered speechless. Dojun then hands him a book, prompting Sehyon to inquire about its contents. Dojun reveals that it contains all his investment plans. Sehyon's expression remains one of shock and bewilderment as he takes the book, his voice tinged with uncertainty as he exclaims, "What?" Flipping through the pages one by one, Sehyon is overwhelmed by the meticulousness and complexity of the plans laid out before him, each one more impressive than the last. As cold sweat trickles down his face, Sehyon continues to read through the investment plans intently, while Dojun sits quietly, sipping on his favorite juice. Glancing at the impressed Sehyon, Dojun wonders how the president of Power Shares Korea would react to his plans. After skimming through all the pages, Sehyon finally closes the book, his expression one of awe. He looks at Dojun and inquires, "How do you even know about these things at your age?" Dojun explains that he often gets that reaction, attributing it to being a bit more mature for his age. Sehyon, regaining his composure, wears a serious expression as he waves the book around, remarking, "That's an understatement. Nobody would believe that a 12-year-old wrote these plans. Forget about your actual plan to invest your money. Who even taught you these methods? Like establishing an investment firm in the States and investing your money through that firm in Korean companies. Even Seoul National University Business School students can't come up with ideas like this." With a smirk, Dojun casually replied that it's because none of those students are the grandchildren of a large conglomerate, nor do they have as grand of a dream as mine. I visited my grandfather every week for the past 3 years. During vacations, I spent nearly all of my free time with him and tried to listen to and understand everything he told me. Sehyon, realizing the young man's tenacity, thinks to himself, everything Dojun Jin, the CEO of Soonyang, told him? Wait. That means this investment plan was largely influenced by him, and Dojun is trying to follow in the footsteps of his grandfather. Before answering, Dojun thought to himself, there you go. It's going as planned. It's difficult to imagine a 12-year-old kid could come up with this, no matter how much of a genius I am. Fortunately for me, I have my successful entrepreneur grandfather to give glory to. With a cunning smile hidden beneath his adorable, delicate, childish exterior, he explained that he still spends so much time with his grandfather, and he speaks of a lot of important things with people, even when he is around. Arriving at an even greater realization, Sehyon froze in silence. Later that day, after wrapping up his meeting with the little man, Sehyon approached Dojun's father, who was waiting patiently in the front yard. As if he were lost in limbo, Sehyon was spooked by his friend's sudden query, asking, "What's with the long face?" He then asked Yoon-ji why he had not informed him about the 14 billion earlier, to which Yoon-ji replied, "Oh, that. Because I didn't want you to have any prejudice before meeting him." With a slightly worried expression, Sehyon said, "Whatever. That's the least of my concerns anyway," leaving his friend Yoon-ji puzzled and inquiring as to what he was talking about. With a frightened expression, Sehyon informed Yoon-ji that his son Dojun is not an ordinary child. He is a genius. Proud of his son, Yoon-ji asked, "Oh, really? I mean, I know that he's a brilliant boy, but..." His response was cut short by his friend, who reassured him that he did not understand. They both looked at each other in unknowing silence before Sehyon walked to the exit, telling his friend to forget what he was trying to explain and that he needed to think about it carefully so they would have to catch up later. "What? Hey! Sehyon?" Yoon-ji called out to his friend, seeking his clarification, but Sehyon continued to the exit without looking back, as if lost in thought. Now comprehending the importance of his friend's words, Yoon-ji questions himself, Is Dojun a genius? Meanwhile, Dojun looks down on his father from his bedroom window. They lock eyes for a moment before Dojun adopts a playful demeanor, leaving his father pondering, wondering in what aspect Hyeon was referring to.